Hello, and thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Bite-Sized Cybercrime, the podcast where we discuss cybercrimes and cybersecurity news. Before we get into our story this week, I just want to tell you why I do this podcast. I have a passion for cybersecurity, but importantly, it helps me learn. When I started this in 2022, I was very fresh and very nervous, but over the years I've grown a lot more confident in myself, and in researching topics every single week, I have learned so much. Continuing education is really important in any tech career because things can change so quickly. I actually just scheduled my AZ900 Azure Fundamentals exam for the end of the month and plan to look into more Azure certifications after that to continue my learning. Pearson is the vendor that schedules a lot of these types of certification exams, and unfortunately last week they experienced a data breach. Pearson is an education giant. They provide a lot of academic publishing, digital learning tools, and, of course, standardized assessments like the AZ900 that I'll be taking at the end of the month. They partner with schools, including universities, and these major certifying bodies like Microsoft and CompTIA to provide its services. Oftentimes, the universities it partners with also act as the testing centers. According to private sources from Bleeping Computer, threat actors were able to compromise Pearson's development environment of January 2025 via an exposed GitLab Personal Access Token, or PAT. A PAT is a type of security token used for authentication into your accounts. It's kind of like an alternative to a password. Most commonly, a PAT is used when using an API, or a command line utility, so it can be securely passed to the online services, in this case, GitLab. PATs are typically very long and generated automatically, so they are not intended to be memorized by an actual person and manually typed in. You would set this type of token as a variable and pass it in using commands. This token was mistakenly left in a publicly accessible configuration file that stores pretty basic settings. Using this token, an attacker was able to access the company's source code, which contained more hard-coded credentials. A hard-coded credential is basically writing a password directly into code in plain text. This is a bad practice because, well, if anyone is able to find the source code, they have immediate access to more credentials and can get easy access to more resources they otherwise would not have had they just had the source code, no creds to find and exploit. There's a couple different ways to solve for this issue, and one of those is to store credentials in an encrypted file and call for that file, or use a hashing algorithm with hashes stored in a configuration file. Most often, credentials should be placed in some sort of config file, environment variables, or specific secrets management tools. Some of these, like environment variables, can bring up other issues, so it's important to understand what works best for the application. But plain text directly in your code is never the correct answer. Just don't do it. Anyways, these credentials were used to authenticate to other Pearson-owned cloud platforms, and over the course of many months, the attacker exfiltrated terabytes of data from Pearson's internal network, and AWS and Google Cloud and other cloud-based services like Snowflake and Salesforce. Stolen data includes customer information, financial information, support tickets, and source code, with the impact potentially in the millions. According to Pearson, the data was legacy data, but this was not further elaborated on. Pearson also did not respond to being asked whether a ransom was paid or not. The scope is likely still unknown, and this story will continue to unfold. Maybe later on I'll know if I've been impacted, though I really hope not. Pearson claims they are continuing to investigate and will be sharing information with customers and partners as necessary. They also claim that no employee data was stolen in the breach. This may seem like a really stupid mistake, but this is honestly more common than you'd think. Things like misconfigurations or accidentally exposing secrets is a lot more of a common way to get breached than you may think. I can't say who or for what reason a personal access token was left in a publicly available file, but there is a good chance it was just an accident. Maybe they thought it was private, maybe they just put the token there temporarily, intended to remove it, and then forgot about it. Accidental security violations are the most common by far, and well, ultimately, even if it may be a minor mistake or someone forgetting about a token somewhere, it can lead to a pretty big breach, which is why it's really important to have a culture of security and be aware of what people are doing in your environment. Thank you to Bleeping Computer and TechRadar for information on this data breach, and of course, thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Bite-Sized Cybercrime. My name is Chloe Tonis, and until next time, stay secure.